Hi, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to my Impress Your Date series. This lesson is chicken and gnumplings. Chicken and dumplings is a classic American dish. Your date is sure to be impressed by this variation on a cold winter night, which uses leftover gnudi from my lesson 86 or gnocchi from my lesson 87 in place of traditional dumplings. Gnudi is spelled G-N-U-D-I and gnocchi is spelled G-N-O-C-C-H-I, so I call the dumplings gnumplings, G-N-U-M-P-L-I-N-G-S. So let's start cooking. Okay, the first step to make our chicken and gnumplings is to season the chicken pieces. Now I have here a couple of chicken breasts that have been cut up. These happen to be boneless. That's what I had, okay? But you can use skin-on chicken. In fact, I think it'd be a little bit better to use skin-on chicken. And you can use any parts of the chicken that you want. I don't recommend using the wings. I think the wings have great taste, but it's just harder to get the meat off of them after you've done the cooking. All right, now we're going to just season both sides. And you know, I like to pat in the seasoning so that it stays on there, especially when you're using freshly ground black pepper. It could fall off if you don't pat it in. Okay, the next step is to dredge the chicken in flour. Get it nice and coated all around. Shake off the extra. Okay, now we're going to brown the chicken pieces in some olive oil. I've probably got about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in here. Swirling them around in there to get a little bit of olive oil on them, okay? And I had already heated up the olive oil till it was shimmering or just starting to get some whiffs of smoke. Now we're going to brown these pieces of chicken. Okay, now these are looking beautifully browned on as much of the sides as I can get. You know, it's hard to get them to stand on end sometimes. Okay, now what we're going to do is keep these warm. Okay, we're going to add a little bit more olive oil to the pan. Now, let's get that last piece of chicken out of there. And now, we want to add our onions, carrots, celery, little pepper, little salt. Don't over salt, just do it lightly. And we want to brown these vegetables. Okay, so we only want these vegetables to be lightly browned, okay? You don't even have to brown them, you could just sweat them. Then we're going to add some garlic and cook that, just for about 30 seconds to a minute, moving it around so it can get some contact with the pan and cook. But garlic burns quickly and easily, so don't let it overcook. Okay, now we want to deglaze with about 1/4 of a cup of white wine or dry vermouth, and let that cook till it is almost dry or just wet. Now we also want to make sure that any flour that is on the bottom or in the corners has been mixed into the broth. So you could feel it if you were scraping around down on the bottom there. If you feel anything rough, that's flour. Same thing in the corners. Okay, then you want to add back in the chicken pieces and want to add the bouquet garni. Now the bouquet garni is always fresh thyme, parsley stems or parsley, black peppercorns, and a bay leaf. All right, so in this case it's about a teaspoon of black peppercorns, and you know, you're just going to use an amount that's proportional to how much you're making. I put it in this little bouquet garni bag, which I will give you a source for those in the description. We'll press that down inside. Now we're gonna cover this. We're gonna have our heat on low, because we just want it to simmer, and we're gonna let this simmer until that chicken is fall apart tender, which is gonna be probably somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. It's just gonna depend on how big your chicken pieces are and how high your heat is. Okay, our stew's been cooking for about a half an hour. Let's check on it. Oh, it's getting a little thick, okay? So let's thin that with some more stock. If you don't have stock, use water. And you also want to scrape the bottom. If there's any of the flour or any of the stew itself that's kind of stuck to the bottom, you want to scrape that so that it becomes part of the stew, okay? That'll add more flavor, all right? Now, let's see how the chicken is doing, whether it's fall apart tender yet. Oh, it's getting there. It's been about a half an hour. Let's go about another 10 minutes, and we'll check it then. Also, because it thickened up a little bit more than I wanted it to, I'm going to turn down the heat to low. It was already pretty low, but now I have it down as far as it'll go. And I'm also going to put a heat diffuser underneath of it so that we get, so that it doesn't cook too much, too hot, and cook off any of that liquid. It's covered, so that should keep a lot of the liquid inside, but still, you know, if it's too hot, liquid will cook off, it'll get too thick, and the volume will reduce. Okay, the chicken was in there in the broth for probably, it's in there for probably about 45 minutes, okay? And it's fall apart tender. We're shredding it with 2 forks, okay? Now, we want to put this back into the pot with the stew, and if there's a lot of liquid on your board, try to get that back into the pot too. Now we're going to put it back into the pot, and we're going to let it simmer in there for about 10 minutes so that the part of the chicken that's now been exposed by shredding it soaks up some of that flavor from the broth, and the broth soaks up some of the flavor from the chicken. Okay, the chicken's been cooking in the stew for about 10 minutes. I should say it's been simmering in the stew. We want to remove the bouquet garni. Okay? And then we want to add the sherry. I'm using about a tablespoon. You could probably use 2 tablespoons in this amount, but I want the sherry to add some subtle flavor, but I don't necessarily want it to be screaming that it's full of sherry, okay? Now is the time to adjust the seasoning. So let's taste it. The sherry is not screaming, okay? It's perfect. It had a little bit of extra depth. I don't think it needs any more salt or pepper, but if when you taste it at this stage you think it needs more salt or pepper, this is the time to do it. This is the time to adjust the seasoning. All right, now it's time to add the gnumplings. I'm adding mostly gnocchi from my lesson, I think it was 82. And I have just a couple of gnudi from lesson 81. And we're going to add those in there. And then stir it up and let those cook in there for about 5 minutes. We want them to cook through. They won't take long because they are they're not dried. You know, they were made fresh and then they were frozen. So they'll take about 5 minutes to cook and to heat through. I'm going to cover it back up. Okay, it's time to plate up. So we're going to try to get a nice mixture of the ingredients into each bowl. Remember, this serves 2. So I'm just going to plate up 1 for the camera though. And then we're going to garnish it with a little freshly cracked pepper, a little bit of freshly chopped parsley, and a few chives, freshly chopped chives. Okay, that's it. That's chicken and gnumplings. You can see photos of the final dish on my Instagram, which is @Chef's Apprentice Cook Like a Pro. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and have a great date.